When we ask the question, what comes to your mind when you think of a URL, one of the most common answers we get is www.google.com or something along those lines. But the fact is, these are just host names, not the complete URL. A URL is actually a bit more complex. It has more parts. A complete URL looks like something that's on the screen right now. Yes, it is a bit intimidating and can look very confusing, but the point of today's video is to try and make that a bit easier. See, a URL has a few main parts, 4 to be precise. We have the protocol, which we see in the beginning. Usually it's HTTPS or HTTP. We have the host name, which is divided into the subdomain, domain, and TLD, which is the top level domain. After a slash comes the path name, and after a question, the search string. Now the path name and search string might not be there in every URL that you see. In fact, you can even have URLs without subdomains. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to focus just on the host name. See, the host name has 3 main parts to it: the subdomain, the domain, and the top level domain. An easy way to visualize this is to think of it as an onion, with the right hand side, the top level domain, being the outermost layer, the domain being the layer inside that, and the subdomain being the innermost layer. A valid hostname does not need all 3 parts. A hostname can have just a domain and top level domain, so google.com for example, or it could just have a top level domain. This is an easy way to visualize it, with all the top level domains sort of from the outside layer, your .com, your .org, .gov, your country's top level domain, so it could be .uk, .us, .au. Inside that you have all the different domains. So Google, Facebook, YouTube, Wikipedia, Amazon, all of this falls inside the domain category. And inside the subdomain, which is the innermost layer, you have usually the page that you're trying to get to. So it would be the images page or the profile page or the www page. So the easiest way to read this hostname is from right to left. So www.google.com, you can now read it as .com, Google, and then www. So we can understand from this that we will go to the www page of the domain Google, which is in the top level domain .com. An easy way to understand this is to think of top level domains as these huge registers, and they hold all the domains of a certain type. For example, .com will have the address of all the commercial websites. That's what .com stands for. .uk will have all the UK-based websites. Once we access this register, this top-level domain, we look for the specific domain that we want to visit. If we're looking for wikipedia.org, we're going to go into the top-level domain .org and then search it for Wikipedia. We won't be looking in .com or .uk, but specifically for the Wikipedia in .org. Well, there are some top-level domains that we see very frequently and some that we see very rarely. .com and .org are the 2 most common ones that we see, and they're generally used for commercial and organizational websites. Government websites often use .gov. That's where you'll find most of the government's official information. As I mentioned before, there are country-specific ones, .uk for the United Kingdom, .eu for Australia, .us for the United States of America, and so on. Companies will sometimes use country-specific top-level domains for aesthetic reasons. A couple examples are youtube.be will redirect you to youtube.com, but the BE top-level domain normally takes you to sites in Belgium. But youtube.be has nothing to do with Belgium, it's just for the aesthetic. Discord.gg, on the other hand, will redirect you to discord.com, but has nothing to do with Georgia. Again, a choice purely for aesthetics. 2 really important things to check for when we're making sure that we're going to the right website, the website you want to go to, is to make sure that the domain you're visiting is the exact same one as the one that you think you're visiting. What do I mean by this? It is common for scams or phishing or malicious links to have a slight variation in the name to make you think that it's a legit site. A couple examples are, if you're trying to visit Google, it should show www.google.com. But if it's a close variation such as Google but with the O swapped out as zeros, or Google with the L swapped out as a 1, or something along the lines of Google and then an X after that, that is not the same site as going to www.google.com. A second thing I wanted to point out is shortened links. It is becoming more and more common to get shortened links, whether it's something that you get in your mail or on social media. A bit.ly link, for example, is a common one that you'll see being shared a lot. It is almost impossible to know where this link is going unless it is explicitly mentioned before. So a safe measure is to only click on these links if it's from a known source, or if you were expecting it because you signed up to something that would send you such a link prior to getting or receiving the link.